Okay, everyone. There it goes. All right, we got it. Thank y'all. We'll call this meeting, Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, to order. Thank the committee for being here on a rainy afternoon. So got some 3 good bills to look at this afternoon, and I'd like to ask Representative Campbell to open us up a word of prayer.
Father, we thank you for this opportunity that we have to come together and to represent the people. We thank you for that. Lift up this meeting to you, that you bless it, and that we seek your guidance in all that we do, and that what we say and do and is pleasing in your sight. We thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Representative Campbell. First up, Representative Jenkins, HB 1384. And Representative, I apologize. Last week we ran late and could not get to this bill, so thank you for your patience on this. I know you've been working hard on this. And by the way, I want to thank you for your support of HB 1150 last week, Freedom to Farm Bill. Appreciate that good green vote on the board last week for that. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate all y'all listening to my presentation this afternoon, and Chairman Dickey, appreciate you allowing me to present my bill today. So HB 1384 will allow ungraded lumber to be used for structural purposes in uninhabited agricultural and residential outbuildings. So when I started working on this bill, you know, like a lot of things, Georgia isn't the first state to consider this. So I looked at legislation across the country, as well as reaching out to all the various stakeholders here in Georgia. And what I've tried to do is come up with a solution that everyone can get on board with. So I believe I've done that. Basically, the use of ungraded lumber will help farmers have access to lower cost structures and help small business owners who own and operate small scale sawmills to gain access to the marketplace. The markets that this bill will create will also reduce the amount of urban wood and unmarketable timber that wind up in landfills and being burned as rubble. So basically, I'm going to try to oversimplify this, and we'll talk a little bit about lumber grading. You know, essentially what lumber grading does is it takes something as unusual or with as varied properties as a tree and creates a product with known properties. As a result of this, Home Depot and Lowe's can buy tractor trailer loads of lumber with known properties that they can resell. People from around the world can buy Georgia lumber sight unseen and know what they're getting. However, on a small scale used for outbuildings, typically these are relationships that go directly to the sawmill producer. Some of this is produced by the property owner themselves. So the lumber grading, you know, has a different application at this level. The law as is simply states that all lumber in Georgia that is used for load bearing purposes must be graded. And in practice, this isn't enforced in a lot of places in the state. As I was actually researching this bill, there was quite a few people that were unaware that you couldn't use rough cut lumber to build a barn or an outbuilding as it's commonly done. I have a very large shop in the back of my property that was built with ungraded lumber, and I really didn't even become aware of this issue till one of my neighbors was going to build a hay barn, and he purchased rough cut lumber to do it and was not allowed by the building inspector. They didn't approve it. So anyway, this will give people predictability and allow them to do what in most cases they're already doing. So in order to do this, this basically just modifies code section 8223. And basically it authorizes the Department of Community Affairs or directs the Department of Community Affairs to change Georgia building codes authorizing the use of ungraded lumber in construction or repair of any uninhabited structure on properties owned for residential or agricultural uses. So that's all I have pending your questions.
Well, thank you. And is there any questions from the committee? See a couple. Representative Wilson, is that you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Jenkins, at the risk of revealing some ignorance here, my questions are just purely to educate myself on this, trying to make sure I understand what we're trying to do here. So currently, if someone buys ungraded lumber, they would have to go somewhere that's not a retail facility. Is that right? Buy direct from somebody?
That is correct. They would either produce it themselves on, and these sawmills are available for sale. Some people own their own sawmills, or there are people that typically they're mobile outfits that'll come out and mill wood for you. That's the normal place where this wood comes from.
Okay, because in Georgia, retail facilities would not be able to legally sell ungraded wood, right?
My understanding is they could, however, it cannot be used for structural purposes.
Okay.
So flooring, and I don't want to speak, but there are load bearing purposes. There are non-load bearing purposes that wood can be used for, that ungraded lumber can be used for. But I'm unaware of any retail outlets that do sell it.
Thank you.
Representative Dukes. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Representative, I'm trying to figure out, where would you use ungraded lumber?
So
So what kind of conditions?
if you were building a barn, a shop, any outbuilding, it's cut in dimensions, much like 2x4, 2x6, what you would buy at Lowe's and Home Depot. So this would authorize it to be used in uninhabited outbuildings.
For further inquiry,
Yeah.
If you had it it's not graded,
Right.
and if you built your shop out of it, with graded material, there is a certain structural quality that's associated with it.
Right.
Do you think that would have an impact on the safety of that particular structure because of the qualities?
Well, in that context, any carpenter is a lumber grader. If you buy lumber that is graded whatever, naturally you would, much like because vegetables are graded as well, that you buy at the grocery store. You bring home a load of tomatoes, you're not going to throw rotten tomatoes in your salad. And that, so yes, any typical carpenter would sort this, and the property owner would ensure that any knots or imperfections were not used that could endanger anyone.
Okay, next Representative Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Jenkins, for bringing this bill. In my area, there's a lot of pride in pine trees. There's lots of tree growth, and there's something very prideful for a lot of people to be able to say they built an outbuilding on their property using their own trees. And as a matter of fact, our FFA in Pike County, you can bring your trees and you go in halves, and they'll turn them into logs or planks of wood for you. So I think this bill is kind of an important factor, because not all buildings on a farm especially are the equivalent to a house. For example, I know most people have hay sheds. I know people have equipment buildings. Some people have potting houses where they'll pot plants early and put old windows up. And none of those buildings are occupied. So I appreciate you bringing this bill because I think there's a lot of opportunities that we're missing with the fact people are just simply not getting building permits because they can't use the wood they want to use. This way, there would be some consistency in the structures that are being built, and they would be, of course, able to insure them because they would have a building permit. So thank you for bringing this.
Well, I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Before we go too much further, I'd like our friends from Georgia Forestry Association, Andres Billy, just come to the podium and give us a little bit of your information on this bill, and Representative Taylor, we'll get to you right after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you on this bill. My name is Andres Villegas, and I head up the Georgia Forestry Association. And I want to thank Representative Jenkins for bringing this bill as well. In an earlier form, the bill would have allowed for and called for a grading system to be put in place for folks who have these wood miser mills that they run on farm, and so being able to produce their own lumber. And we appreciate the work that Representative Jenkins did and working with us, understanding the I guess the dangers of having kind of homemade lumber, if you will, out into the general economy. And so in its current form, this bill, of course, is a private property rights bill. If you cut your own lumber on your own farm or on your own place of residence, and you want to build an outhouse, you want to build a non-inhabited structure, that's on your property, that's within your rights. And so we have no issues with the bill as it is. And we appreciate Representative Jenkins' work on this particular piece of legislation.
Thank you. And could you also speak to the committee a little bit about the process for grading lumber? I was pretty fascinated and impressed about the system we have that does inspect and grade lumber at sawmills before it goes out for sale.
My pleasure. So just as for context, we are in the #1 forestry state in the nation. We grow more timber and harvest more timber than any other state in the nation. We plant more trees than any other state in the nation, somewhere between 200 and 300 million trees a year. That's more than most countries around the world. So we are a powerhouse when it comes to forestry. What comes from those trees? Well, we rank 3rd in the nation in production of lumber, and that number is going up because we have a lot of investment going into our sawmill sector here in Georgia and across the Southeast. That's as a result of several things, but one of the main drivers is that in Canada, their government did a very poor job of controlling something called the mountain pine beetle. And for those of you who have been skiing out west and seeing the devastation to the forest that we see in California, Colorado, Utah, and up in British Columbia, where it's even worse, they have lost their natural resource. We cannot ever let that happen to us here in Georgia. So please support your state agencies that work on that. But back to what drives our ability to be the #3 lumber producer in the country. Big part of that is trust in the lumber that we produce as a state, that it can be a product, as Representative Jenkins noted, that you can trust. It has a certain structural qualities when you're buying it from Lowe's, Home Depot, or any retail establishment. So a big part of that is that back in the early 1900s, the Department of Commerce realized, and our industry actually realized, we had an issue when we went to the federal government with regards to ungraded or different grades of lumber being used in construction and failure in buildings. Department of Commerce established a standard for that, and they commissioned the American Lumber Standards Commission, ALSC, to govern all lumber grading in the United States. They also do some lumber grading overseas. So when a sawmill in France or even in Russia or in other places around the world or in Brazil wants to send lumber into the United States, the ALSC has to certify that lumber to our standards overseas as well. So they do the same work they do here in the United States as they do in some other countries. They then empower in the Southeast, there's 2 big units that do that, or companies that do that work. One's called Timber Products Inspection, TPI, which is here in Conyers, Georgia. The other one is Southern Pine Inspection Bureau, which is out of Pensacola, Florida. When a sawmill needs to get certified to grade lumber, they'll bring the individuals in and train them. It takes about 6 to 9 months to get trained to grade a stick of lumber. So the house that you live in, the person who graded that 2x4 that's holding up your roof, it took them somewhere between 6 and 9 months to be able to get graded, to put a stamp on that says this is a #2, a #1 prime, a #3, whatever it is. On top of that, every one of our mills have computers that will scan, thump, do sonic resonance on every stick of lumber that's going through that mill to understand what its structural properties are. And then, so that's what's happening. These SPI and TP, sorry, will give permission and certify the mills to grade lumber themselves. But they come in at least once every 2 weeks, and they will do spot audits on every single one of these mills. And so they'll come and pull packs of lumber, they'll pull sticks out of different packs of lumber, and they'll start looking to see if the grade that mill gave that lumber is actually adequate. And so there's a lot of checks and balances. They also have third-party auditors that will come in on a regular basis too as well. And they do retesting of those graders that they've trained as well. So it's a very, very robust system, because we know that we cannot have failures in our built environment. If you think about what happened with the towers down in Fort Lauderdale in Florida, or Miami, I guess is where it was when that building failed, that scared a lot of people that lived in buildings, right? And so we've learned those lessons over decades of making sure that we're doing everything to prevent those kind of failures in the built environment, and gaining and earning the trust of folks who buy and use our materials out there, not only in our country and in our state, but all over around the world where we ship our lumber to as well.
Thank you, Anders. I appreciate that. Grading is very important, and I'm very impressed with the good job we do and the quality products of our lumber that's coming out of Georgia. It's a great industry that we need to do. And I want to thank you for working with Representative Jenkins to try to find a little niche that those little small sawmills can legally fit into. And so thank you for that. We got some questions. You might want to stay there a minute if there's any for you or either for Representative Jenkins. I think Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions. My husband's a contractor. He's retired now, but he was very specific on the grade of lumber he used when he was building. And what I'm reading here, and I want to make sure I'm understanding it, is that it can be ungraded if it's uninhabited. So if you have a barn, what if it has animals in it? Is that uninhabited?
That would be uninhabited, yes.
Okay, it's just human. Okay.
Correct.
And the other is, it says right now it can be on residential property. What if you build some little building there and later turn it in to something that is inhabited by people, a little building you want to turn into a rental property or something? Is it going to be noted anywhere when it's built on a permit that it has ungraded lumber, so that the new purchaser or user of that facility would be aware of that?
Well, if you were to turn a outbuilding into a home, I would assume, and I'm just making assumptions here, that the local jurisdiction would issue building permits or not issue building permits to do that based on the manner of construction that it was built by.
Okay, thank you.
Floor Leader Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for bringing the bill. The only concern that I have on line 11, uninhabited structure on property that is zoned for residential or agriculture. Do we have communities across the state or counties that don't have any zoning ordinance? And if not, if they don't, would the current language prohibit ungraded lumber from being used on those properties?
You know, yeah, that's a point that my assumption would be zoned, agriculture, residential, or commercial, and that it's all zoned. But whether we have any unzoned property in the state of Georgia, I'm unaware, to be honest with you.
Ledge Council, do you have a opinion on the wording?
Mr. Chair, I also don't know the answer to that. I would assume that everyone has adopted a zoning ordinance at this point, but I can't speak to every locality in the state.
I think it's worth asking the question of ACCG.
Okay. Maybe we can try to find an answer for that. Excellent question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I do not see any other questions from our committee. I would entertain a motion if it's the will of the committee. Got a motion, got a second. Any other discussion? Any other questions? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you, Representative Jenkins. Your bill passes
All right.
on the rules. Thank you for bringing a good bill.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you letting me present the bill to your committee.
Okay, next on our agenda. Representative Gaines. You're got a HB 1443.
Do you mind if they come sit with me?
That'd be fine with whoever you like
I'll
at
introduce
the,
them.
whoever you like at the table. Food trucks are popular these days.
They are.
We'll
They
see
are.
we'll see if this bill is popular.
We'll find
I
out.
also want
together.
to thank you for your support of HB 1150 last week, Freedom to Farm Bill. Thank you for your support.
That's a great bill. Thanks for your leadership on it.
So, okay, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1443, which we have before you today, and have Tony and Desiree with the Food Truck Association of Georgia with us up here this afternoon. This is an important measure to help cut red tape, unnecessary red tape and regulation and permitting fees on our food truck industry. This measure is designed to address an issue that we've heard. In fact, we first met almost 3 years ago to discuss this issue, and it's taken us to this point to get a bill that we feel is going to help them and also addresses any concerns that other folks have. This is an article that was in the AJC and GPB and other places earlier, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the headline is, "I cried a lot. Georgia food truck owners worry about the high cost of fees and permits." And frankly, we just have too much regulation and costs that we're burdening these small businesses with. And so we feel like this bill is a very sensible solution. It has and allows one statewide permit currently to operate in different counties. A food truck has to get a permit in every single county they operate in. Under this measure, they would still have to notify the county where they're going to alert them where they'll be and when they'll be there. But you would have one permit that applies statewide. The other thing that is obviously an issue is the cost of the inspection fees. We are not saying they can't be charged the inspection fees. We do have written in the legislation they need to be reasonable and only the cost actually incurred by the local Department of Public Health. But again, these permits would be applied statewide. It would save time and money for our food trucks. Since we introduced the bill originally, we've met with the Department of Public Health, ACCG, and the Georgia Restaurant Association, and we've, I believe, have addressed every concern that they have with the substitute that's before you, which is LC 540075S. And again, I think they were actually meeting while we were still late on the floor last week, met for 3 or 4 hours with the Department of Public Health, went line by line. And I think we've come up with a bill again that addresses the concerns that any of these folks have. And so on this substitute, I've not heard of any opposition, but I do appreciate everyone working with us on this measure and again, coming up with a bill that will protect the safety of Georgians and the public health of Georgians, but also cuts red tape and helps our food truck owners. Be happy to answer any questions, and these guys certainly know it on the ground. Both own food trucks and operate food trucks in our state, and I think there may even be a couple other food truck owners in the room as well. But happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. We do have some questions. Representative Hogan.
At the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, we're gonna take a few more questions.
I like that.
Man, you got a friend there, Representative Gaines. I wish I had friends like that.
Food trucks are popular in St. Simons.
Representative Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Gaines, and for bringing this bill. But I do have a question. So you're saying currently food trucks have to get a permit for every county they go into from that local permitting office?
That's right. And I don't, Tony, do you want to maybe speak to it on the ground, how that's,
Sure. And thank you for having us and hearing us today. Yeah, the way it works today is if you're in the full food truck business full time, that means you operate in anywhere from 10 to 20 counties at a minimum. And so that means 10 to 20 different permits, 10 to 20 different inspections. And, you know, as Representative Gaines said, not only is it incredibly expensive, but it's also incredibly time consuming because we have to physically bring our trucks to that location. You got to schedule appointments, you got to fill out paperwork, and it's the exact same paperwork. Everybody wants the same information. DPH has done a great job of trying to standardize the permitting process and the expectations. So again, you're doing the same thing. It's just redundant in the county after county after county, and it's unnecessary. And I want to come back to you guys 5 years from now and say, hey, we're lumber. We're number one in the country. You know, this has changed the game. And I think it would go a long way to doing that if we could get this passed.
And I'm sure with the high prices of gas right now, this could certainly help your business.
I got to walk on.
Now further, if I may, Mr. Chairman, one last question, because down in rural Georgia, I don't see many food trucks.
We're
So
coming.
that's what I want to hear.
Yes, ma'am. We're coming.
That's what I want to hear.
Thank you.
Representative Bentley,
Thank you.
the Strawberry Festival has food trucks.
That's right. Well,
What county?
Taylor County, the Strawberry Festival. So mark your calendar, all of the food
All
trucks
right.
companies in here. So you'll be here more. We'd love to have you down in that part of the state to see what's going on. And some of you may want to make that your home. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for bringing the bill. I read that article when it was in the paper the other week, and I've heard about the issue even before then, and so I appreciate you bringing this. I just want to make sure we know what we're voting on, since this is a substitute and there's a lot of underlying words here that I haven't had a chance to review before the hearing. Question, maybe this is better for your witnesses, but you touched on this just a little bit in your previous response, but what is the variance among counties on the permitting process, what they're requiring, and then what is the variance you've seen with the ordinances?
So I guess the biggest distinction today is really only price. It does vary. Price for the actual permit does vary by county. But you have what you call your base of operation, your home base. So you get permitted in that county. You're also required to do a plan review when you first start. They come and check out the truck, make sure your menu matches your equipment, matches your water take. But other than that, it's really just about price, because again, DPH has done a very good job of kind of standardizing the questions, what they want each county to follow. So again, they've really eliminated the need to re-permit. Did you have?
DPH in all 159 counties follows the same guidelines issued by the state. Okay, so once one permit is issued in one county, we're just asking for that permit from the health department only to be recognized in all 159 counties. This doesn't affect cities and ordinances and where we can set up and how we set up. It just doesn't allow us to park anywhere. That's still controlled by each and every city that we go into. And I just wanted to make that clear. This is just from the health department standpoint alone. The health department also has a database that each county would be able to look into, which is part of this bill. It's going to help them expand that database. So if I'm licensed in Fulton County and I choose to go do an event down in Bibb County would have access to that system and be able to look and make sure all of my permits are current, that my food truck, we have a proper base of operations. We have the mobile food service permit, and that our truck is in good standing in every county that we operate in. So this bill would also help on expanding that database to every single county in the state of Georgia.
And thank you for that. That's what I was wanting to tease out here, is that the permitting is the same across all the counties. You're just asking for reciprocity.
Exactly.
And but key that the businesses will still be subject to the ordinances in that outside county
Absolutely.
that they choose to go into. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for those questions, Representative Whitson. And Representative Gaines, you worked with DPH on this over the last few days and weeks. Can you speak to that too?
Sure. Yeah, the substitute before you incorporates changes that they asked us to incorporate. Met quite a bit last week, and I've been on the phone quite a bit, and want to thank Megan and the entire team from DPH for working with us on this. And I think we have a measure that they are neutral on and are fine with. But certainly I think they're in the room and could speak to it as well if need be.
Okay, thank you. We've got several more questions. Representative Mitchell is on Zoom. Welcome to the committee, and I think we can hear you.
Awesome. And Representative Wilson did actually hit on one of my questions, which was, are the regulations the same? But in the response, you actually said the fees are quite different per county. If this is if this is now moving to a system of complete reciprocity, it's more of a state database than a county one. Are we concerned that what we will do then is have a large number of food trucks going through the counties with the lowest fees and other counties still kind of providing services and reciprocity, but not necessarily recouping some of the costs of the service of maintaining permitting per that county? Should this now be a state managed permit?
That would probably, it would be managed by the state health department technically, but each individual health department in each county operates separately. What we're trying to do is make it one permit under the entire state so it can kind of be run together. The database allows each and every county access to all of the permits that are there. And going back to the fees only vary pretty much when a food truck first initially applies to get permitted in each county. So just to give you a rough idea, Fulton County, which probably has the largest influx of food trucks, charges roughly a $500 plan review fee and maybe another $500 fee for the actual mobile food service permit itself. That's the only fee pretty much that varies in every county. So I'm also permitted in Rockdale and Gwinnett, and I may go to Rockdale and Rockdale may charge me $600 for the same process. That's where it varies. One of the solutions to that problem would be is if each county followed, kind of set a price that would probably match Fulton County's, which is probably the most expensive in the state. So it would cost you $1,000 to start initially, between the plan review fee and the actual permit fee. The only difference right now is that some of the counties further out who aren't as familiar and may not deal with as many food trucks tend to charge a lower fee because they don't see it as much as Fulton County does.
Okay, Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don't you have to register which is your home location? So that kind of sums it up. And if I could have a follow-up, can we get a truck at the Capitol? We don't have one. Thank you.
I was thinking on the day this hopefully hits the floor, maybe we could have some food trucks out in the between CLOB and the Capitol.
Representative Yura.
Thank you, Chairman Gaines, for bringing this. It's a good bill, and actually we have a number of food trucks in our downtown in Sylvester, which is a small town. But I think my question got answered. Basically, the health inspection is done in the county of origin. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And then that permit would be recognized
At
across
any
the
other
state.
location.
That's
Okay.
right. And
Initial health inspection is done in the county of origin, but any county at any time can choose to inspect.
Right.
that truck, so.
That was my second question.
yeah,
Thank
so
you.
in the bill, it does allow for, unannounced inspections as it currently
Right.
exists in the law. And one of the language, one of the things ACCG and DPH asked us to add is that they can still charge a fee for that inspection, but we made sure it would only cover actual costs, so they can't, make an excessive
Right.
cost.
Right. Thank you.
Typically, that's like $55. Is that right? Yeah.
Representative Scoggins.
Okay, thank you for the bill. I understand what you're trying to do. My only question would be, what is the difference from a company like Chick-fil-A going out and building a brick and mortar in one county and having to get permits, and then the Chick-fil-A building in another county right beside it, and the one county does not work for that on brick and mortar, but you're asking us to do that for the trucks. Is that correct? Tell me if I'm wrong, Adam.
No, well, and if you have two food trucks, you got to get two permits. If you got two brick and mortar restaurants, you got to get two permits there as well. And that was one of the changes that the Georgia Restaurant Association asked us to clarify in the definition on lines 58 and 59. This would only apply to one single one single food truck. And so if you have multiple food trucks, you got to get multiple permits. But if you have just like if you have multiple restaurants, you got to have multiple permits there as well.
Okay, all right.
And just since you mentioned Chick-fil-A, they're in the food truck business,
Gotcha.
as are just about everybody now.
We got another question, Representative Leverett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you've seen me eat, so you know how much of an interest I have in this bill, Representative. So is county of origin defined in the bill, or is it basically wherever you select as your county of origin?
It's based on where your base of operation is, which is a commissary. It's the place you have to return to each night. It's where you store your supplies, clean your truck, empty your gray water, refill your fresh water.
Is that defined in the bill or elsewhere in Georgia law, or is that just your understanding of the way?
Could you speak into the mic?
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the line. I believe currently it's in regulation, but I believe we actually put it in the bill that you do have to return to your origin commissary every 24 hours.
Okay.
And I know that's in regulation now. I want to say we put that in the actual bill as well.
So
But
that
it is
would
currently required.
that would effectively limit it. If
That's
the
right.
cheapest permit
You
in the
have to be there
state
within-
is in Seminole County,
You're not
and
gonna
you're up
drive
in
there.
Northeast, you're not
That's
going to
right.
go to Seminole County to get it regulated.
Exactly.
And
It's lines 139 to 141.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the other question, I think one of the witnesses touched on it, is this would not eliminate any and all permitting by the other counties other than the county of origin. If you have to get a permit to park in a particular location, that would still apply.
Correct.
This is just the health inspection.
Health inspection.
Because the idea being, unlike the two Chick-fil-A scenario, this is one kitchen. Kitchen's not
Correct.
changing. It's just
That's right.
moving around.
That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, we're getting close here. I really don't see any other questions. Thank you for your work on this bill. Less regulation, streamline. I like hearing all those good words and good innovation. So we have a motion on the floor from Chairman Hogan. He must be getting hungry down there.
Health down in Glenn County. And I think y'all got a good bill, and I make a motion to pass.
Got a motion? Do I hear a second? I hear multiple seconds. Any other discussion or questions on this bill? Hearing none, all in favor of do pass, say aye. Opposed? Hearing no opposed. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Motion passes for LC 540075S.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, I did not call some other people. Okay, we have another couple of bills here. Representative Schofield. You have got a resolution for us, HR 880.
Yes,
And
good afternoon.
I am so disappointed you did not like the Freedom to Farm bill.
I'm sorry.
These other people just loved
You
it.
know how it is when you got to go with your caucus now.
But I do.
But you know I know.
But I welcome. Yeah. But we do welcome you to the Ag and Consumer Affairs Committee. We have a great committee here that loves agriculture, and I know you do too.
I do. I'm learning to love it because as I'll talk in a few minutes, I'm not a farmer, but you've taught me how to become a good farmer. And to Chairman Hogan, we're going to have you out of here in a few minutes. I promise to keep it brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you House Resolution 880 LC 39329. It's a simple but important resolution. And I do thank the chairman for all of your help and getting me focused on what we need to get done. And the reason why this is important is because it's encouraging the support of urban farming. We know that across Georgia, there are issues that deal with farm deserts, and it's a big, especially in the urban community. And I know that when we don't have an adequate food supply, that it leads to obesity, diabetes, and other types of chronic diseases. So this is an important way urban farming can be used to help communities be introduced to the concept, whether it's a raised bed or backyard farming, rooftop grading. I myself am born and raised in New York. But I am a Georgian. I'm a New Yorker that loves sweet tea, so that qualifies me to be here. And now I know I'm solidified because I've had a raised bed for over 5 years, and it's one of the best things that I have done in my life because I grow my own herbs and different foods in the season. And my family laughs at me because they're like, "You are not a farmer. We come from a high rise on the 14th floor in New York City. This is not you." But my daughter herself goes out now and will pick things out of our garden and bring them in to cook with. So I know my schools have it, and urban farming is something that really will marry the two cultures and really expand an opportunity for us to make a healthier Georgia. So this, again, is a simple resolution that is going to bless many people. The Georgia Urban Agriculture Council supports this resolution, and I ask for your favorable support. I'll take any questions.
I would, I see one question. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for bringing this House resolution. I fully support this in urban farming. It's interesting that you say there are 35 food deserts in the Atlanta metro area, and it's 159 counties, but it's 35 in the Atlanta metro area.
It's probably in my neighborhood.
That's interesting. Also on line 4 and 5, you say that there's high rates of obesity, chronic disease, such as hypertension, diabetes, cancers, as well as increased chance of stroke and heart disease.
Mhm.
This is extremely important as well, because if you don't know, the #1 chronic disease in the state of Georgia is heart disease. So I appreciate this resolution.
Thank you for your support, and thank you for being my ag mentor.
Well, thank you, Representative. I see one other question, Representative Camp.
Hi, and thank you for bringing this measure. This is an interesting resolution. I was reading, are there currently zoning ordinances that prohibit people from having gardens?
In some areas in the urban area, yes. Now, I can't give you specifics, and I would be glad to talk with you offline on that, but in some areas, yes. So that's why we need a little push to encourage more participation.
All right, thank you.
Another question, Representative Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
Well, this is our first hearing on this bill, and so we've got several other committee meetings scheduled, one for in the morning at 8:30. And also, if we need one, I've actually got a room later in the week as well. So I just thought you've been very patient with this resolution, and I just thought we'd hear it this first time, and we'll get back and see if there's any other questions on it. You do have one other question, Representative Bentley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's more of just a comment, just want to publicly thank Representative Schofield for her work on this legislation, and look forward to you coming back at a later date, presenting again. So
I
thank
can't
you.
wait to come to the Strawberry Festival. I've
Thank
never
you.
been, so
Thank you. I was glad to hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative.
Appreciate you.
I appreciate your love of agriculture
Thank
and
you.
urban
That's
agriculture,
it.
rural
Urban farming.
agriculture.
For urban farming is what they tell me.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Appreciate everyone. This is moving fairly well. I've also asked our friend, Representative Metz to, Maynor, excuse me, Representative Maynor, welcome back to the Ag Committee. And I think you've got a substitute bill.
Yes.
I think our last committee, we had some questions and you've gone back to lead council and I think made some adjustments
Yes.
to a good bill. And also, sorry we didn't love Freedom to Farm Bill either.
I thought I signed.
Yeah, well, maybe next time.
Are you sure?
Maybe all your neighbors down in our area do some convincing for you.
No, she just said I voted yes on it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you for your support. I misread. Thank you.
Maybe Representative Metz. I don't know.
Thank you very much. You made my day. I was reading my little sheet wrong here. So
You know, I have farmers in my family, so.
my hero today.
Yeah, I was confused
Thanks
about
for
that.
the question. Okay, let's look at the sub and let's can you refer to the number on it as well?
Yes, it is LC 510169S. And thank you to Legislative Council for making all of the changes that we talked about in the subcommittee. This is my third time, I believe, coming before all of you. And in the subcommittees, a lot of good information was given to us and we changed everything. So I want to bring your attention to lines 12 through 15, because this is where the bulk of the changes are from the previous version. What we added is, as used in this code section, and the term merchant means any person except a sole proprietor or a business with one employee. That was what Representative Regina Ward mentioned, because she's a book author and when she goes to certain places so she can get she doesn't have to abide by this. And then if you go to line 14, excluding offers made online or entirely through an automated machine. And that answers the question about the automated parking attendants that we talked about in subcommittee. And in a nutshell, so I did not tell you what this bill is about to the full committee. I'll tell you the story of how this bill came to be. I was in a Family Dollar in my community, and there was a man in line in front of me buying a gallon of milk. The milk cost $2 and something, and the attendant said, well, the man said, well, where's my change? And he said, it's exact change only. So they did some back and forth, and ultimately the man clearly needed the milk. So he walked out of the store paying $5 for the gallon of milk. And what we've seen, just people mention on the panel, as well as myself, if you go to a drive-through, if you go to any number of places, people are saying exact change only, and they're not giving you your money back, right? You give them your money and they keep the change. So this bill says you've got to give the consumer a store credit or something instead of just keeping their money. And this excludes events that have 500 or more people, because we took into consideration that a large sporting event or a music festival, it may just be easier to use a card, and people at sporting events or large music festivals and they cost maybe $100 a ticket this time, now. So they probably most likely have a card to use because everyone does not have a card to use. And so this bill allows consumers to purchase something without requiring them to use a debit card or a credit card. They can still purchase things like anyone else. And I will yield to questions before I get myself in trouble.
Okay, thank you. You do have some questions. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, can you tell us where, if you're aware, where this is in law in other states or cities? Do you know?
I don't know. I just know that in Georgia, we have something called, there was a coin shortage, which is why they initially started saying exact change only. And we have a representative that actually researched that, and there is no longer a coin shortage, but people are still saying exact change only.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google search, and it looks like New York City, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., New Jersey, Massachusetts, Colorado. I just thought that was interesting for the committee. And is Mercedes-Benz Stadium in your district?
It is.
And they do not accept cash, correct? Or they have a rule that you can't pay in cash, I believe.
I think so.
But they would be excluded because it's more than 500 people.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the excellent question and the research.
Representative Wilson, were you trying to make some correlation about those cities and towns? That sounds kind of familiar.
Like a lot of the policies in those cities and states. I'm just saying.
Okay.
We should look at more of what they do.
Representative Scoggins.
Representative Maynard, this is a great bill. I want to tell you, I like this bill. And anybody that does that is stealing.
I agree.
I mean, that's the way I think. This is a great bill. Thank you for bringing it.
Thank you, Chair.
Representative Camp.
Thank you, Representative Maynard, for bringing this. I think this is a good bill. I appreciate the fact that you took into consideration everything that was brought up in the last hearing. One thing that came to my mind, of course, and which I brought up, was the automated machines. Many of us using parking apps when we park, or we use the little whatever the kiosk to do our parking. So I appreciate you taking that into account, and for the fact that this bill is going to protect people who worked very hard for their money, not to give it away because they simply need a good or a service. So thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you for this bill. I have been one of those that happened to. And I wonder, is there any way we know on the books how these merchants have been claiming those dollars they did not return out to the public? That's a question for the rest of the world. I wonder if they're showing it as profit or just not showing it. Anyway, thank you for bringing the bill.
That was also part of the problem.
We got a couple more. Representative Bentley.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Maynard, for your work on this legislation. But my question is just, how would this be enforced? I think this is a good bill, good measure to protect consumers, but sometimes things fall by the wayside when it get down to rural Georgia, unfortunately. So how would we ensure that this become law in Georgia, that this message makes its way down to the Family Dollars and the General Dollars way down in Ideal Georgia or Dueling Georgia, and where the population is less than 500? How would we get that message out to them?
Messaging is one thing, but a Family Dollar, they really should be watching this Consumer Affairs Committee meeting, making sure that they're following the laws. But if you look at lines 28 through 29, at least this gives the consumer a way to at least get up to $10 back for each violation that a store is not giving them their change back.
Representative Dukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is good legislation. It has been well vetted by our committee, and at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, thank you. We got one other question, Representative Mitchell online.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I apologize. I don't have the bill in front of me, and I appreciate all the edits that you made that were indeed very thoughtful. Does the bill still require all vendors who are not single proprietors and are not events of 500 or more to accept cash without an option to not accept cash? I love that this is making sure no one actually feels your change. But I think the impact of requiring every vendor to accept cash was one that was previously in there and was one that could be a challenge for many vendors.
So legislative council and I, we went back and forth with that a lot, and there was just no way to fix every single thing that this subcommittee suggested. So we were able to legally put in sole proprietor or one employee. But the issue here is people not giving people's change back. And the other issue is consumers not being able to purchase with their legal tender, which we were not also able to put in the code because it's already identified in the code. That was another question in subcommittee.
So as it stands, you do have to be able to take cash, or you are not able to, or you are in violation of this law.
Yes. You must.
Okay. Thank you for the question. We've got a motion on the floor. Looks like you're a lot of support for this bill. Do I hear a second? I did hear a second. Any other questions? All in favor of do pass this bill, say aye. Opposed? One no. Okay, two no's. All right. Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you, committee. We do have another committee scheduled in the morning. I know some of us going to a breakfast, and so that's why it's at 8:30. And we've got two bills on the docket tomorrow as well. So thank y'all. 8:30 in the morning. Meeting adjourned.